праздником! Ура, друзья! Ну что, проходите в магазин, он открыт. Распахнул свои двери специально для вас 3000-й юбилейный магазин Чижик. Друзья, всех с праздником! Заходите к нам скорее, посмотрите, сколько всего вкусного и интересного.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Traveling with Russell. Welcome to a rather chilly and foggy Moscow. And welcome to a new supermarket video. Something quite interesting. Let's go check it out. The reason that I've come to this particular store is it's rather unique. And this is Chizhik, which is a hard discount supermarket chain which has established itself in Russia. And they're actually celebrating two things at this store. They're celebrating the fact that they've been opening stores and in operation for 5 years. And this is also their 3,000th store. So it might be interesting to go and check it out. And I know they've got some events for it as well. And I think it might make an interesting video. Let me explain a little bit about who I am. I am an Australian who lives in the Moscow region. I live about 2 hours away from here. This is in the northeast of Moscow, and I live in the southwest of Moscow. And I've come here early this morning for the opening, and I've worked in retail all my life since I was 15 years old. Worked in supermarkets, I worked on cruise ships, I've worked in Caribbean islands. I've done everything there is to do with supermarkets, shops, and retail. And that's why this YouTube channel started. And I continue to create content about retail. And if you're watching this wondering, what the heck am I doing watching a supermarket tour? That's my backstory, and I hope you find this video interesting. For the opening of shops and supermarkets in Russia, it's very normal to have events and a DJ and a host on a microphone, and this is no different. Only thing is, I'm a little bit disappointed with how few balloons they have. Normally they've got a big garland of balloons over the entrance of the store, but they've just got a few of them. They do have their characters here though. So the store name is called Chizhik, and the actual Russian translation is a bird, or a very small yellow and black bird. So this is an anniversary store, the 3,000th shop. So let's walk on inside and check it out. So this is quite interesting because it was an existing Russian supermarket chain, and they've essentially left this particular store and then they've opened as a new brand. And I think it's really interesting, particularly for all the locals that are going to come shopping here. They'll have known the other chain because it was here for a lot of years. And then now for Chizhik to open, I think even the locals will be happy to see a different retailer in this space. Part of the opening of the store. It's really interesting. This is the boss of Chizhik here in Russia, and he's giving a impromptu talk about the chain and the future of the company. And there's some other bloggers and media here to cover this as well. And it's really quite interesting just to learn a little bit more about the company and some of the strategies that they'll have going forward. I was wondering why they've got a yellow fridge right here at the entrance. And if you spend 1,000 rubles, you can go in a drawing to win a yellow fridge in honor of the 3,000th store. That's really cool if you want to get a yellow fridge for your apartment. They've also got some giveaways, so you can get an ice cream, you can get some candy, and then there is some salami as well. These are all products that are sold in the store. However, for the grand opening, they've got a giveaway. You can also get tea and coffee as well if you like, and these are the different products from the shop. And then you put your entry in and you've got a chance to win a fridge. And if you might end up with the runner-up prize, it's a kettle. They also have some signage outside the store with the prices of products. And then there's also a comparison here between a competing supermarket. So you're shopping for 2,000 rubles, what you can get if you're doing shopping in Chizhik versus the nearest competitor. And one thing that's really interesting, and I'll talk about it more in the store, is the way they do their pricing. I have previously made videos in the different Chizhik stores. I was actually at the 2,000th store and made a video there. I wasn't there on the opening day, but I was there a couple of days later. It's a rather interesting format and how their shop is laid out. And I think it might be interesting just to take note of a few things that I show you as I walk around. And the actual shop is now fully open. So the one thing that is quite interesting are these two doorways here. So this right-hand door is obviously the natural entrance to the store, and then the exit on the left-hand side. Now, depending on the store you go to in Russia, you can really go in any door. But the way they've got this set up here, they don't actually have a handle on the exit door. So it's only a one-way door system to go in and out. So let's check this store out. Now, what's really interesting is it has an almost IKEA-style layout in the fact that they're encouraging you to walk a certain path around the store from the entrance to the exit. And then when you've done paying, your basket and your trolley comes back under this little fence right here, and the shopping process starts all over again. Now, there is a few things that are quite unique about Chizhik and the way that they actually have their store set up. And if you've perhaps been to Aldi or Lidl, this may be quite familiar, particularly if you're not in Russia. Perhaps this style of shop format is recognizable. So what they have is they've got all of their products in what's called shelf-ready packaging. So it makes it actually easier for the staff and employees to be able to put all of the stock on the shelves. And the other thing too is the actual design of the packaging is custom made to fit the shelves. Now, this may not be important to the shopper, to myself who comes in to buy something as a customer, or you guys watching at home. However, to somebody working in a shop, this is quite technically interesting. Now, we might actually see it right here. So if you look at the shelf, the two boxes of this stock fit exactly to the depth of the shelf. The chocolates fit exactly to the depth of the shelf right here, where it goes too wide. And then the same over here, 2 wide or 3 wide. The exact depth of the shelf is suited to the products. Now, I will walk around and show more of the shop. The other interesting thing is the way they've got their products laid out. Now, not necessarily the categories in different areas of the shop, but the quantity of products. Talking a little bit more about the assortment in the store, one thing to notice also is the fact that they've got less quantity of different products. So you've got less things to choose from. Now, what that means quite literally is in almost every category of product, they generally only have 2 brands. They'll normally have a recognized brand, like you see here, Greenfield, which is very well known tea brand in Russia. And then they've generally got a second product, which is their private label product. So you'll see here, Greetings Earl Grey. And then there's a 20 ruble price difference between the two. So you've got the choice of taking the branded product or taking the private label product, where it's a little bit cheaper. And this spreads across the entire store. So if you actually look at every shelf, as you're walking around, you'll recognize the brands because we know them so well here in Russia. And then you're going to see a second option, which is their private label from Chizhik and then from the primary company that stocks this store. The other thing too with their fruit and vegetables is they have a smaller assortment and they get them delivered more often. So they're going to get just 1 box or 2 boxes of something, it sells out, and then they get tomorrow another box or 2 of products. And it just keeps things simpler, keeps things easier, and it then makes stocking the shop simpler at the same time. And there is almost that warehouse feel to the shop. So you've got that nice, clean layout, but then you've got this kind of products in boxes look to the store, which works so well because they're just easy to put out. They come on the truck from the pallet onto the cage to go in the store, and then slide right into the space which is allocated to the product. So you'll see here also with pasta, so you've got a couple of recognized brands, and then they've got the private label brand on the top, and then that spreads across all the different shelves in the store. And then you'll see here in the middle, so depending on where you live in the world, they sometimes call this Little in the Middle, and it's an assortment of products that are seasonal and they change every week or 2, and they're generally nothing to do with traditional groceries. So you can see here you can get a lamp, you can get a different type of air fryer if you want to get an air fryer. Actually, most of these things are all household. There's even one of those robot vacuums as well. Actually, they're right down here. Interesting, it's in English also. Maybe you need a, what are these things called? Steamers. It's called Kiwi brand. So you've got all these different assorted items. Maybe you didn't walk in the store wanting them, but they're available for you. The video that I intended to make was about the opening of this store and the fact that it's the 3,000th, and the fact they've opened 3,000 stores in 5 years is also amazing. And you know, to be in competition with so many other chain supermarkets in Russia. Just thought I'd show here the price of eggs. So 54 rubles for a box of 10. And again, these are a private label box of eggs. And the actual flour on the other side is also the same price. Also 54 rubles. And this is for a 1 kilo pack. So 67 cents it works out. And the simplest way to keep prices down is just to get a pallet delivered like this, slice it open, and let everybody shop. What's the price of eggs and flour where you live? Let me know in the comments. Right throughout the store, this shelf-ready packaging continues, and in the refrigerated section it's no different. And all of the things like yogurts and butter are packaged the same way, drinkable yogurts. And again, it's down to the company to request the manufacturers to make the packaging specific for the shelves. So right down to the exact size and depth of the shelf. And then quite simply, they just slice open the package, put it right on the shelf. Even the milk, they just put the whole stack of 6 on the shelf like this. They pick one open, and then they've got staff going around and then cleaning the store on a minute-by-minute basis. And you'll see actually even on this top shelf as well, the same, where it's a shallower shelf. However, it fits the products perfectly. And you've got everything clearly labeled. The other thing that they do really well in these stores is they've got nice big price labels, these very large format ones. So it makes things very clear to know what price something is. It's not the little tiny price tickets like you see in a lot of other chains. Here is the hams and some fish products. Maybe somebody likes seaweed. So it's really interesting just to note this as you go into your local shop. So the one thing that this really does is it cuts down on the extra work from receiving the products to getting it on the shelf to stacking it neatly. This might be another interesting spot here to have a look at the branded and private label items. So on the dog food right here, we've got Pedigree, which is very well known around the whole world, 19 rubles. And then Watson is their private label right here, and it's 14 rubles. So you got a 5 ruble lower price. The same for the cat food, 14 rubles versus 21 rubles. And Whiskas, I think it's probably the most known brand in the entire world. And it even goes across to cleaning supplies, where they've created private label items. And almost all the time, the private label brands actually come from the main company that supply the branded products. And they're just made specifically for the store chain. As we walk around a little bit more, now this staff are running around everywhere to make sure the shop looks good. Now the actual opening of the store just happened, so there's obviously a lot of people who are walking in this shop for the first time. It'd be really interesting to know how many people that are shopping have never been to Chizhik before. And I think more than likely, especially for this area, they haven't seen one. You know, a lot of people shop close to home. They don't necessarily take a car or a bus to go supermarket shopping, and they want to shop literally where they live. And I'm no different. I have a supermarket in my building downstairs from my apartment. I actually have 7 supermarkets within 1 kilometer of my house, and they're all in walking distance. So it's just interesting to note that. See a bit of a difference here in the Heinz. Okay, it's a little bit different size packaging. 150 rubles for the half kilo Heinz, and then their private label one, 350 grams, 60 rubles. So can't compare everything apples and apples, but you can get pretty close when you want to, you know, compare different things. They have a little bit of frozen items in the fridge. I'm not sure how many pizzas they sell here. You can get a pizza for 170 rubles, so about $2 if you want one. A little bit hard to point out everything in the store because it would be a very long video. However, this might be interesting just to look at a couple of different products here from different countries. So the toilet bowls are from Hungary. The deodorant spray is from Russia. And we've got Old Spice from Czech Republic. And then there's the ladies one from Poland. Talking a little bit more the way they got their pricing on the shelves. So Chizhik doesn't have weekly sales or discounted items that are for a 7 or 14-day period. So everything on the shelves is an all-the-time price. So you don't have to wait till something comes back on special or something is reduced next week or you missed it because it was last week. The pricing is always the same all the time. Now, this is making it much simpler for everyday shoppers like myself, because I'm not having to go to one store for one promotion, another store for another promotion, and what you see on the shelf today is what the price will be next week or the week after, and so forth. And the idea behind it is it keeps it simpler, and shoppers remember where they went to buy something, and they remember the price, and they'll come back. Just looking at the soda here, they've got pretty much all of their own in-house brand, and it's called Fun Up. And this is their private label for their sodas. Looking at the water, they've actually got some of the recognized brands. So over here, Borjomi, and even the classic water as well. But then they've got the private label brand if you want it. Then we come around the corner and they've got some more of these seasonal items. So what happens is with these, they are only delivered once. Once they sell out, They wait then for the rotation of the next lot of promotions. Very similar to Aldi and Lidl. If you've shopped there before, you'll know this concept. And then the beer. Very simple. Again, they just put the whole trays on the shelf, and then very typically in Russia, all of the beer is sold individually. Even if you want Corona in a six-pack, you've just got the single bottle price. And the chips. So the same thing again, they've got a recognized brand and then a private label brand. And there is definitely differences in prices. So you've got that option. If you want to save money, you can. I think I found my future Christmas gift. If anybody wants to grab me them, you can get some hamburger slippers. I just noticed this on this stand in the middle here with all the different items. So there's quite an eclectic mix of things. And one thing that I noticed, they've got these beanies here. Now these are pretty classic. They've got the ear flaps on them. However, they're not from China. They're made in Russia. So you can get things that are made in Russia, which anywhere else in the world, this would be made in China, shipped to the country and then sold. But they want to try to support local manufacturers as much as possible and use local companies. You know, there is factories in Russia that make bed sheets, that make clothes, that make towels and blankets, and you can get a lot more things made in Russia than what I think a lot of people realize. It's definitely really interesting to see how many people are shopping here. Now, just looking at the map of the local area, this is the first Chizhik store within quite a fair distance. So I would definitely think that most people have not been to a Chizhik before, and they'll have definitely known about the existing chain supermarket that was here. And just to see the people coming shopping and discovering new products, particularly a lot of the private label products. Of course, we know the branded products on the shelf, but then when you're seeing an alternative, which is cheaper, it's definitely interesting to see how people are shopping and what they're choosing. And just the amount of people that are here. This is a very well-known chain. I mean, to open 3,000 locations in 5 years, that is really staggering. Think about that in terms of where you live, and would your local supermarket be able to do that? I think if I look at Australia, it's definitely not quite so possible. And the fact that it's not just in Moscow, it's all over the Russian Federation. They actually have shops in 172 regions across the entire country. And 1 million shoppers per day buy something in one of these stores. That is interesting in itself. I love fun facts. If anybody knows me in person, I'm all about facts and statistics. So it's really interesting to learn this from coming today. I have a local Chizhik where I live. I mean, I wouldn't make the 2-hour journey across Moscow to come shopping. However, for the opening of an anniversary shop, and considering the nature of the channel that I have, it's only appropriate that I came in here to check it out. There is lines now at the registers, but I think everybody's not too bothered. It'll die down in the next day or two once most of the locals come in here at least once and discover what's available and what kind of prices things are. As I make my way out of the Chizhik store, I hope you've enjoyed this video of the 3,000th store. Interestingly, I was at the 2,000th store as well, but not at the opening just like this. So it's really cool. I mean, I think it's not even a year ago and they've opened 1,000 more locations across all of Russia. In Moscow, they only have about 170 stores because it's not easy to find locations or existing locations that they can take over and open a new supermarket inside. So it's really very cool. The channel was built around supermarket tours, so it's only appropriate that I come to see something like this. Now, the one thing I'm going to ask everybody is, do you go shopping at a specific supermarket, or do you go looking for specials in certain ones, or do you just shop simply at the one where you live? And there's an apartment building almost attached to this supermarket as I walk down the street, and I think almost everybody that's here today shopping are people that live within walking distance, and that's very normal across the entire Russian Federation, that people like to shop close to home. They don't want to get in a car and drive half an hour or 1 hour in traffic simply to buy groceries or some food for lunch or dinner. So thanks everybody. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and post a comment below. Perhaps you're from Russia and you know this chain already. I think it's really interesting that I get a lot of comments from Russians who say they've learnt about places because of my channel. Now, I'm going to use a secret word, and I'm trying to think what to actually use. However, the logo of the shop is a small bird, or a finch, or whatever the correct word is for the Chizhik bird. So perhaps if you mention the word bird in the comments, I know you've made it to the end of the video. If you want to follow me on Telegram, I post all the time and every day, and you can follow my daily travels. And then if you want to watch an old video on the channel, you can click this link and you can keep traveling with Russell. Okay everybody, I'm off on another adventure. Bye.